Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Chanda Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopi Chanda Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopi Chanda Gopi Chanda Vallabha Giribharadhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Chanda Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopi Chanda Vallabha Giribharadhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Chanda Vallabha Giribharadhari Gopi Chanda Vallabha Giribharadhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravana Chari Jamuna Tiravana Chari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Shri Radhe Jaya, Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Radha Govinda, Shri Radhe Jaya. Nitai Sachinandana, Gaura Hare Jaya, 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 Panchatattva Jaya, Panchatattva Jaya, Panchatattva Jaya, Panchatattva Jaya, Panchatattva, Panchatattva Jaya, Panchatattva Jaya, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, Hare Krishna. So, thank you everyone for joining. Nice to be back in Govinda's Weep and also in the Dublin Temple. I think I will start on the verse without further ado, which is Canto 1, Chapter 6, verse number 3. Just get my glasses out as well. And it's entitled The Conversation Between Narada and Sri Vyasadeva. Swayambhuva kayavritya, Swayambhuva kayavritya, Vartitam te parambaya, Katam chedam udash rikshi, Katam chedam udashrakshi, Kale prapte kalevaram, Kale prapte kalevaram, Swayambhuva kayavritya, Swayambhuva kayavritya, Vartitam te parambaya, Vartitam te parambaya, Katam chedam udashrakshi, Katam chedam udashrakshi, Kale prapte kalevaram, Kale prapte kalevaram, Swayambhuva kayavritya, Swayambhuva kayavritya, Vartitam te parambaya, Vartitam te parambaya, Katam chedam udashrakshi, Katam chedam udashrakshi, Kale prapte kalevaram, Kale prapte kalevaram. So the word for word translation, Swayambhuva, O son of Brahma, Kaya, under what condition? Vritya, occupation. Vartitam, was spent. te, you, param, after the initiation, vaya, duration of life, katam, how, cha, and, idam, this, udashrakshi, did you quit, kale, in due course, prapte, having attained, kalevaram, body. And a translation. O son of Brahma, how did you pass your life after initiation? And how did you attain this body, having quit your old one in due course? Purport by Zavankar Srila Prabhupada. Shri Narada Muni in his previous life was just an ordinary maidservant's son. So how he became so perfectly transformed into the spiritual body of eternal life, bliss and knowledge is certainly important. Sri Vyasadeva desired him to disclose the facts for everyone's satisfaction. Amagana timirandasya gana gana chalakaya chakshuran militam gena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So just read it again. O son of Brahma, how did you pass your life after initiation? And how did you attain this body, having quit your old one in due course? I usually like to have a nice long purport with which to discuss and to speak on. But because we're just taking a verse a day, I can't rush ahead till I get to the next long purport. But I thought what I'd do is go back again a little bit to the whole context of the story. And one of the things which struck me in the last few days and for the last few classes has been Narada Muni's ability to relate with people. And there was two major instances where we found that. One was when we spoke about Narada meeting Mrigarhi the hunter. That was quite an incredible story because Mrigarhi was basically half killing animals everywhere he went, and Narada was going through the forest, and then he suddenly saw all these real suffering animals which were half killed. So he wanted to find out why was this happening, who was doing this. So he went and he came upon Mrigarhi, and so he asked Mrigarhi, "Is this you who's doing this?" He said, yes, this is me. This is my occupation. My father and my father's father did it. It's a natural, it's the way we make our living, basically. And so Narada thought about how he could preach to this person. So he said, well, better that you just actually kill them rather than half kill them, because all the suffering that you're going to give to these poor animals, it's going to come back to you when you leave your body. These animals are going to come and torture you exactly in the same way that you've tortured them. So anyway, that piece of information seemed to register quite strongly with Mrigarhi, and he began to think, well, if I'm going to get all this suffering by injuring these animals, surely I'm also going to get the same thing if I kill them as well. So then he asked Narada, wow, Narada, what can I do? How can I live a life whereby I don't get any of this karma? And so that was exactly what Narada wanted to hear. So what Narada said, of course, first of all, was to, okay, throw away your bow, first of all. Throw away that bow of yours. You're not going to kill any more or injure any more animals. So immediately, Mrigarhi was very upset by that, because he was thinking, oh, what am I going to do for a living? But Narada straight away assured him, don't worry, I will send you food every day. Just throw away your bow and then go and live by the river, set up a little camp there with I think he had his wife as well, and worship Tulsi. And so, of course, when McGrary the hunter did that, and he found that all the village people were shocked. Wow, this is McGrary the hunter. He's actually sitting by the banks of the river, and he's not killing anymore, and he's just chanting all the time. What's happened? So it's a bit like that same pastime when Jai and Vijay were converted by Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. So the people couldn't believe that these people had actually changed, but it was very powerful preaching for that whole village, definitely. And ultimately we found out for humanity at large, because these stories are in the Bhagavatam, that he sat and he didn't have, not only did he have enough food to eat, but he had enough food to eat for 10 people. So McGrary had to ask Narada to try to not to get everybody to come and give him food, but they were all so shocked and they were so impressed and they were paying obeisances and everything. So that shows how Narada was able to preach even to one of the most dastardly half-killers of animals. And of course, he was also preaching to this Muslim as well, which Sanatana Govindadas referred to the other day, when he told him he said, chant Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. No, I can't do that. He said, okay, well, just chant Haram, 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 Haram. And eventually the person became a great devotee just by chanting the holy names. So this is the context in which these conversations are going on, because we know that Vyasadeva, he was preaching as well, and in fact he was preaching directly from the Vedas, but his task was to divide divide the Vedas into 4 parts, and he had done that. He had actually done it so as to try to facilitate the people to make advancement in spiritual life. But his spiritual master, Narada, came and explained to him that, well, what you're doing is not necessarily very good, because now people are just exploiting this ability just to enjoy in the name of religion, and they're not actually going the full pathway to spiritual life, because they're just enjoying where they are. The four Vedas have been divided into that way, and then there's religion for economic development, and then there's sense gratification, and then there's liberation. It's kind of more like a materialistic religion in that sense. So Narada was telling him that people were getting stuck on sense gratification, and that's Prabhupada makes a reference to that in one of the purports earlier, whereby he says that people, even our ancestors, if you look around the country here in Ireland, you'll see all these amazing churches, and they were being built in a time when Ireland didn't have actually any money, because it was under British rule basically, and yet all these Catholic churches were all created at that time, and before that a lot of Protestant churches were created. So, but as soon as the material enjoyment or the sense gratification was delivered without having to pray to God, then suddenly a lot of these churches stopped being built, and instead what was being built were cinemas, hotels, offices, shopping centres, to such a state now that some of the most successful churches in America, they have their churches in the shopping centre, so that people can actually just go from their shopping into the church. There's a lot of truth can be found in that. It's quite an interesting way to do it. But so that is so we're talking according to preaching, according to time and circumstance. So we see earlier, Narada was preaching in a way to get people to come Krishna conscious. Vyasadeva was trying to do the same thing, but he dropped something in the meantime. He dropped the ball, as they're saying. He didn't speak about the glories of the holy name. He didn't speak about the glories of Krishna, and so I thought I would take that in the context of today. I remember back in the 70s and 80s, more so the 80s because I came around to about 82, it was actually a little bit easier to preach Krishna consciousness because it was such a new thing, and you could tell people about, about animal killing, about yoga, about the spiritual path, about you're not this body. It seemed to be, it was a new thing for everybody. And people really took it. And then we saw a huge intake of Krishna consciousness in Ireland, basically between 82 and 87 or so. So many people became devotees at that time. But subsequently, now we see that it's not such a new thing. You have so many people who know about reincarnation. They know about vegetarianism. They know about karma. So a lot of these things are starting to kick in. And so on top of that, there was a lessening of faith in any spiritual organization or spiritual system. Around the 90s, when the Pope came, or sort of the 80s, I think, when the Pope John or something came to Phoenix Park, there was 1 million people went there. I actually went there myself. It was 1979. So people were kind of still going to those organizations to get some spiritual sustenance. And then in the 90s, it became clear that some of the leaders in the Church of Ireland weren't actually following as they might have been. And two of the major persons were shown to be quite hypocritical in the way that they lived. I'm not making any comment on their particular lifestyle, but it was definitely perceived as such. And then again with the Magdalene sisters and a lot of the stories started to come to the front from the time when religion was going on. People started absolutely lambaste organized religion, and then of course the whole child abuse issue then became to the forefront and is totally still there at the moment today. So the alternative then seems to become the liberal agenda, whereby anybody can do anything and everybody's accepted. So we're accepted, the Hare Krishnas are accepted just like everybody else, but if you say anything that's anyway upsetting the liberal agenda, you're deemed to be a fanatic or an extremist. So in 2016 I went, and 2018 as well, I went to the ILS, which is the ISKCON Leadership Sangha in Mayapur. Fantastic event. I actually had it down to go in 2020 as well, but unfortunately my gallbladder had another idea and sort of deemed that I should stay at home instead. But when I was there in the other years, there was a real emphasis to be relevant to people, actually. And that was particularly Radhanath Swami was giving talks and Devamrita Swami was giving talks. And then I also took a real current day example, of course, was Indradumna Maharaj. I was just listening to a recent little report that he did about his preaching in Rishikesh, in which he said that he got his crack team there. Madhava was there, Badahari. I'm sure all his cooks were there. So many people went there basically to preach. Now, unfortunately, it was cut short a little bit by the coronavirus, but Dinabandhu was there, Dinabandhu Prabhu. And apparently, like the way that they were all talking about it, they were glorifying it like it was the old days. Rishikesh is a place where a lot of seekers go from the west, and they go there because it's a famous place. It's one of the holy places in India. So many people went there, and so Maharaj spotted that on a previous visit, and so that's when he had these Krishna Fest, which was all about the Holy Name Fest, or Kirtan Fest it was called. And so he had all his kirtaniers, and everyone was just chanting all day long. And then they were giving prasadam afterwards. So it was kirtan, prasadam, and then kirtan, that's chanting, dancing, and feasting afterwards. So this, of course, is Srila Prabhupada's original way of getting through to people. And we see that it still works. it's still in operation today. The kirtan, very nicely set up by our devotees in Dublin. Sarumi, Amanda Vikram Prabhu's, they have this quarterly fest, or have been having this quarterly fest. There may be a little absenteeism for this next one, but still, we've been having Kirtan Fest. We've been having the Kirtan as well. Every month we have this other type of Kirtan, and every Tuesday we have our Kirtan in the Dublin Temple. That's been going on since 87 or something, or 97, 2000. God, I'm getting bad at my dates. 2007. So we have this kirtan going on, and it's still going on as people come to it regularly. And at the end, we have some prasadam as well. So we can see that this is a very important way in which we can function. It's a very relevant way that people relate to us a lot. We have our restaurant in Dublin giving prasadam. Just when we reopened there, we reopened for 3 weeks. We had a short week the first week, but it was still a very good week. The second week was a record week. We'd never done as much prasadam. And then the third week, it was just started to close by the end of the week, and it was still a very good week. But then after that, obviously, the coronavirus kicked in and we had to close the restaurant. But we may be opening future for takeaways. But people love our prasadam. And so we were also doing some Harinam on the street. And whenever we do Harinam on the street and we set up a book table, we haven't done prasadam yet, but once we set up the book table, people actually start to come over. So these are ways in which we can be very relevant to the people today. And it's something which we should always kind of consider. But the reason that I brought this point up about the restaurant and about being relevant is that this whole coronavirus, we understand, has been started in, different theories besides. Ostensibly, it was started in a food market in Wuhan in China by selling things like bats and pangolins and whatever. That's, in other words, this is a very important time to talk about non-killing of animals, and in order for our sustenance. And whereas in the 80s and 90s we were top, even in the noughties we were actually top of our game. We had our higher taste. Anytime we go on the street, give out the higher taste, it would fly out basically. And because we had so many recipes, but we had so much talking and so much from Prabhupada about the dangers and the problems of animal killing. But today's, we find in the last maybe 3, 4, 5 years, the whole vegan system has taken hold, and they've knocked us off our perch basically, as being the forerunners of vegetarianism, and they are much more relevant to the people today. And we find that more and more people are vegan. In our restaurants, so many people are asking for the vegan option. Now they're getting prasadam, it's vegan prasadam. But like at least 50%, I'd have to check with Amanda Vikram about that, but at least 50% of the people who come to our restaurant are vegan and are looking for vegan options. The others, they love their curd sabji, that's the way it is, they do. But so that is another way, though, I feel that we've fallen behind in our preaching, is that we haven't put into practice Srila Prabhupada's whole emphasis on simple living and high thinking, and simple living based around the economy of the cows and the land. So it has been quite difficult to put it into practice. We've seen it in New Vrindavan. It worked for a long time, but then there was problems, and then the whole thing kind of faded out. And although it is going at the moment in a smaller way, itself, Gitanagari, I remember in Gitanagari there was 160 cows there, but they had a whole big problem there as well, and so they weren't able to instigate it as they were hoping to. We see in New Rajdam how it actually occurs. It's occurring very well there. We see it in the manor, how it is it's sponsored by the whole Indian community. And we see it up in Leicester, where Sitaram is selling the ahimsa milk, 33 cows milking. And again, we have our own cow protection again in Ireland, thanks to the devotees there who are looking after the cows so nicely. And also it's something which we want to really put to the forefront of our preaching, how these cows are being protected. But at the same time, we also, which is one of the ideas in Dublin, is to, Dublin and beyond, but in Dublin, is to get some land just outside where we can try to exemplify this cow protection. And we can also only give ahimsa-free milk in our restaurants, because that would put us back on the forefront again, because we are a very, very popular restaurant there. It's extremely popular. That I noticed it much more in the last while because I was down there in all getting the place together. So if we could start to bring that into our preaching as well, growing our own vegetables, also doing, looking after the cows, then we could start to retake that position again. Not that we completely dismiss the cows and get them off the face of the planet because they're only exploiting. That's one of the arguments they use, and the diehard vegans. That's the way that they will present things. Spoke to Sitaram. He said that most of the vegans, they're not kind of diehard fanatics. If they see another alternative that we're looking after the cows, they will go with that. Some will not touch anything, any exploitation of animals. They will see that as that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable. So we're aiming for the middle ground as before as well, so that we can actually convince an awful lot of people. But then we can also start to concentrate on the mainstream, because the mainstream has been hit heavily at this point with its whole lifestyle, as we see. The whole lifestyle is called into question. The whole system in which everything runs has been called into question. None of us 2 months ago would ever have thought the way this whole thing can kick in, that we're all almost prisoners in our own homes. We can't go out within 2 kilometers without having a good reason. It doesn't. We'd have never thought like that. We're a free society, we say. But anyway. So there are certainly major systems are beginning to be questioned, heavily questioned at this point. So I thought actually, when we're talking about Narada, that not only do we have to become relevant to people, but we have to also become purified, seriously purified. And I thought about how this situation is a perfect situation. To try to, not perfect, but it's a situation in which we can actually try to bring our message to the people in general, to see can we make a difference, to see can we be relevant in the whole society. I mean, if we look at Srila Prabhupada within the period of maybe 3 or 4 years, Hare Krishna was a household name all over the world. I remember in the 70s or 71 or something, I remember looking at the Top of the Pops famous show, and the devotees were on it and they were chanting Hare Krishna. Now, it had some effect on me. It didn't register completely, but it sounded like, that sounds pretty good to me. So within 3 or 4 years, Prabhupada was able to achieve that. But no, we have one of the titles on our Lilamrita by Satsvarup Das Goswami, A Lifetime in Preparation. And if we study that book, if you read that book, you will see the hardships that Prabhupada went through to try to make that message relevant to the people today. Some of the things that he had to go through were phenomenal. Just start the fact that he was 70 years old. I know I'm in my early 60s, but 70 years old, leaving India, never been to the West, an alien culture, completely a Rakshasa culture, and he was trying to bring this message forth. He was fearless, absolutely fearless. He wasn't going to take no for an answer. Even with heart attacks on the way over on the boat, that wasn't going to stop him. Even before that, he wasn't able to get his ticket. The lady who was going to sponsor him said, listen, don't bother about that. Go back and stay in Vrindavan. You're a saintly person. If you go over there, you'll die. Prabhupada wasn't afraid, even being told that. And eventually the person relented. Even when he was trying to get his visa, which was an astronomical thing, we saw what Prabhupada had to go through to even get a visa to go to Japan. He got no support to go there. And so in India at that time, there was a huge bureaucracy. And also at the time in 1965, there was no opportunity for Indian people to come over to America, So there were some things seemingly in his favor, but he also, even when he was in the West, his typewriter was stolen. He was there for a year. He was there with the snow. So many things were happening. But even when he was in India, his business went bust. His whole way in which he was trying to set up the League of Devotees was knocked out. The institution that he was representing was obliterated. Even when he got sannyas, he was on the street. He was gored by a cow. He hadn't got food for his. He hadn't got food, but he still used his food money so that he could print his books, print Back to Godhead, and then he was gored by a cow on the street. So many things that were against him, but he kept on. He kept on keeping on, and eventually he got to the West, and he started to preach his message. And even for a year he was there, and no one came. No one was interested. Just a bunch of, normal New Yorkers or whatever. They just didn't have any interest in the message. But Srila Prabhupada said, he said he's not a great scholar, even though he wrote all these books. He's an incredible scholar. But he said he had faith in the holy name. And I just thought, from one of the purports a few days ago, we see this amazing sentence from Srila Prabhupada, in which he says, and it's in relation to Narada, one can obtain all the facilities which she, Narada, obtained by perfecting the chanting process of the sound representation of the Lord. So Srila Prabhupada, he was able to exhibit incredible qualities, all the mystic opulences that Sri Narada had, because he had full faith in the holy name, and all of those facilities he obtained by perfecting the chanting process of the sound representation of the Lord. So we know what we have to do. We don't have to be told any further than that. We have to hear the holy name. We have to bring the holy name into our lives. We have to invoke the holy name. Our chanting has to be purely calling out to Krishna. Prabhupada made it so simple, but I think that one of the devotees said, I think it was Madhav said the other day, it's simple, but it's not easy. And the reason is because of the mind. I won't spend a whole time talking about the mind or about my false ego. I will just repeat the messages of what Prabhupada was saying, is just to hear attentively, to pray like a child is crying for the mother. So this is a time when we have to disregard the mind and keep on bringing ourselves back. Even Arjuna couldn't concentrate. He says it's impossible to control the mind. But Krishna says by constant practice and detachment, it is available to be done. So we should read any books that promote the chanting of the holy name, and we should read them before we chant. I've got a couple of new ones at the moment which I'm reading, Shivaram Swami and Satyananda Maharaj. And before I used to read these books by Satsarup Maharaj, he used to write constant books about japa reform. They've all been highlighting it, and my mind has been missing it. So these are the things which we should be doing at this time, because we have more time. Because we always complain about not having time, but we have more time now, and our mind is still there. If we're going from freedom into lockdown, our mind will still follow us. It'll still be there. But at least now, actually, one piece of advice from Sri Ramaswamy is that he said, I don't want to imitate his accent, but the way he speaks is very powerful. But he just said that just try chanting 64 rounds, 108 rounds, 100 and something rounds. He said, just try it, do it. If you have nothing else to do, just try it. By Krishna's grace, this Ekadashi, I'm going to try 64. I should be able to do it because I've done it a few times before. But you just get the experience. This is what he's saying. Get the experience of the chanting. Just get that experience there. And that will stay with us. That experience will stay with us. It means that then through all the trials and tribulations that we will get when hopefully this whole thing finishes and we'll be able to get back into our preaching, we'll have this strength built up, but we'll continue to develop this strength. Just because it's the lockdown now and not later, and we might get into a more busy life subsequently, we've got to take the means to maintain a strong life, because this is the only thing which we have to offer, which will help humanity. I mean, there will be so many other things which will be set into place, but we have to be good instruments in Krishna's hands to be able to, so he can put us in the right places so that we can actually help this whole world situation. I mean, Krishna, just we can see with just a click of his fingers, he's completely changed this whole situation. Just like that. Everything has suddenly changed. So it's not as if Krishna is impotent. He's omnipotent. He's omnipotent. He can do anything. But he does it generally through his devotees. And he makes his devotees sometimes he glorifies his devotees, and he makes his devotees even more powerful than him. That is what is said sometimes in the Shastra. So Srila Prabhupada was like that, and he wanted us to be like that as well. So he's telling us how we can become like that to whatever degree we can. At the same time, we don't have to do something big. I know sometimes our mind goes away with us, and Sri Rupa Prabhu was making this point yesterday, that, we think, I can do it. Yeah, I can solve this. Yeah, I'm the answer. The false ego steps in and then starts to elbow his way into the top of everything, No, even the smallest thing can be very important. I was looking through some of the letters of my spiritual master from the 90s yesterday, and he probably knew my nature. Yeah, let's do this. We can do this. And then he said that even just a simple offering of fruit, it can be pleasing to Krishna. So we should never lose sight of that as well. It's not that Krishna is dependent on anything that we can do. No, Krishna just wants to see the sincerity with which it's been done. But we'll be able to have that discrimination if we spend our time chanting sincerely and hearing, and by associating as well. It's such a great time to associate with so many of the devotees. A very good talk or an interview with Rukmini Devi Dasi the other day, and she explained how when Prabhupada was there, devotees felt empowered to do so many things. Prabhupada wasn't hackneyed or stereotyped. Prabhupada was very, very adaptable. Sometimes he would use the Vedic aspect, and sometimes he would be just whatever was worked for the preaching to make people Krishna conscious. Prabhupada was so expert like that. So we have to also become expert as well. Like we see the two contrasts here with Vyasadeva. He probably seemed to water it down too much. I mean, I'm not making any aspiration on Sri Vyasadeva, but shall we just humbly take that point which has been made, as he's also making it himself. And Sri Narada, he's so adaptable to time and circumstance. So we see that there. And we see Srila Prabhupada, he was so much ability to do these things. And so many of our spiritual guides, which I was mentioning there earlier, they're so expert at presenting as well. So we should be following it in that process by becoming humble ourselves. It was a very good point that Madhav Krishna Prabhu was making the other day about humble. Everybody likes when somebody's humble because they can fit in, they can fit into the association, and then therefore the association becomes strong because everyone is listening to each other, because everybody has a really important point to make. I'll conclude by just following on from a point from yesterday's class. It was very interesting, actually. I was noticing how Srila Prabhupada was saying how, because his class was about the parampara, and he was also making the point how the disciplic succession isn't just, it stops at one point. He was also saying that Prabhupada's system, it goes through the ISKCON authority, and he was making that point that that's still there. We shouldn't sort of think, oh, I only have one way in which I can follow is whatever my spiritual master says. The spiritual master is also following Prabhupada, who set up ISKCON, who is, in other words, there is plenty of shiksha that is there. And I've seen that on a couple of occasions, 3 occasions I give examples of that. Is, I remember when Radha Govinda Devi Dasi was getting initiated by Sri Ram Swami in the temple room there on Inishrath. When she paid obeisances, when we pay obeisances to the spiritual master, he instructed her to go down and pay obeisances to the temple president, who at the time was Tulsi Priya Prabhu. And it was very deliberate. He did that, so that people could understand that there is a kind of a way in which things are done. Secondly, I remember when Panchadranagiri came to our temple. We were very fortunate to have him there on Inishrath. And I think it was Tribhuvanat who asked him to perform a marriage ceremony. And he was a brahmachari. But before that, he came to me, because I was the temple president at the time, and he asked me, Prabhu, you're the temple president. Can you please tell me what you want me to do? And I was looking at him completely astounded, Who's this senior disciple who's one of the most advanced devotees in the movement? He gave a class on Dandavats a few days ago. Man, listen to that class. That's another cracker. I know there's so many classes, but that's another absolute incredible class. And he asked me what to do. He was asking me. Even more recently, I heard of an instance where, in the last couple of weeks, actually, a senior Prabhupada disciple I was going to do something, but then a temple authority who's much more junior was kind of made some point, and the senior devotee said, oh, I totally take that on board. I appreciate Prabhupada's system. If he's speaking through you, the spiritual, I will take that on board. Amazing. I mean, some of these devoted Prabhupada disciples have got it really down. But then Rabindra Prabhu was making the point, yeah, but what about, we've seen so many instances in the past where people follow the authority and then they became blown out because the authority was a little bit off track, or a lot off track. And so what do we do then? So then immediately I thought about another situation, which was the situation, a famous time in New York, where the temple president's wife was, I believe, offering some fish, chicken or fish, something, and she had that on the offering. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, I'm not sure the exact details, but it was something pretty horrendous anyway. And eventually, Srila Prabhupada got to hear about it. And he had 2 responses, actually, which is very interesting. Despite that the temple authority was off, some of the devotees just kept on with the service, kept on doing what they were doing. They could see what was happening was off, but they just kept on doing their service. And Prabhupada said, very good, you were following it. You were following very nicely. But to the temple authorities, he was very annoyed. He said, how could you let this happen? Why did you do this? Why did you not speak sooner? So we see that there is different things in different circumstances. There's different responses in different circumstances. And then I also thought about another system that Srila Prabhupada brought in these instances, and that was the system of the Ishtagosti in the temple. Ishtagosti, Prabhupada was saying, this is what the spiritual master said. That's literally the devotees discuss what the different devotees said. And he said that also that was a time to bring up different issues in the temple, And I've often noted that in those situations, if you go around the room and ask everybody what they're thinking, you can get some incredible insight. Another instance when that happens is when devotees are making offerings to Srila Prabhupada during the Vyasa Puja. You get an incredible insight into how people are thinking, and you are shocked almost at the level of advancement of the devotees around you. So these are very important kind of. Oh yeah, then you have the GBC. Srila Prabhupada didn't say that one person is the Acharya. He said that all of you together discuss, and he made that a very important thing in the GBC. And also he said at Mayapur once a year, if there's any problems, then you come there and you discuss. I remember Jayadvaita Maharaj one time, it was back in 1988, some of the devotees from Ireland had some issue. And regardless of the issue, Jayadvaita Swami was actually very appreciative. Some devotees weren't appreciative. Oh, who are these upstarts, whatever. He said, yes, if there's some problem, come to Mayapur and discuss it. That was his instruction, and which I very much appreciate. So, in other words, that we should have the system there, but there are these other imbalances and checks and balances that are there, and also just that gets back to that point that about the humility. If we are Krishna conscious, then it is very, very nice because we will hear everybody. Everybody's got something important to say. All the devotees have very, very interesting things. I know even in our Govinda Dweep there, sometime we had some meetings before, and some members of the community, some things that they said had more effect on my whole understanding of what was happening. And they weren't on temple committees, they weren't on temple councils, they didn't live in the temple. It was just some of the things they said from their heart had huge impact, and that Krishna can speak in different ways. Okay, so I'll stop there. I don't know if there's any comments or any questions.
There's a couple of comments, but there's a slight lag here.
Okay.
So
there's some comments, yeah. What are they?
Just give it, because you're still speaking here.
Okay.
On my version.
Okay. Can you read them out?
Surmi says no questions, only comments on the video, but people need time to type. Supriya says many vegans are such for health reasons and to prevent climate change, etc. So I guess we would have to take those boxes to really be seen as a positive alternative to the growing vegan and plant-based movement, as well as bringing bhakti and the holy name. So live sustainable and eco-friendly, as well as health conscious and Krishna conscious.
Yeah, there's a very good point there from Supriya, that we definitely have to tick all the boxes, and it's funny because that's what what Srila Prabhupada, was bringing in at the beginning about simple living, high thinking. He he set up the New Vrindavan farm practically from the beginning, and the very last thing he did in his life is he wanted to go over to Gita Nagari to show how we should live. So, yeah, that's very, very true. We were kind of leading the way originally, but now I think the way is leading us as well, and so it's important for us then to start to really take these things seriously as well. The whole plant-based life, the whole sustainable life, and several of our members are really into that. I remember Terry and Neve. I think Terry is, when we were working together one time, he would be always talking about sustainability, and it started to get through. And then I saw in the temple he introduced different changes as well. But yeah, we have to be really on that. In my opinion, we have to be on that level as well. And in fact, there's several GBC injunctions on that level too. recently about not using. You're having to use reusable, not one-time plastic cups and so on. But I think it is. I mean, I read one little thing from the Ahimsa farm over in Leicester. They were saying that, with the cows there, that helps all the microbes as well in the land. And I often hear that B12, which is one particular vitamin which is absent a lot in a vegetarian diet, is found if you live with cows. Actually, that certain things like that are, that symbiotic relationship that goes on. And also, Supriya was mentioning about the people with health conditions. I mean, we can see that the whole food industry is, and as well as the health industry, it's like they're highly questionable, in how they operate. People have. I mean, it's a wholesome thing. It's we definitely need to present that. And funny, I'm actually thinking. I was thinking about how that could be done, because we have tried several things. I think Supriya's parents, obviously, where they were in down in Glengariff, there was different attempts that we made to live simply, live off the land, which weren't successful, and there were for various reasons, and devotees trying to live, not owning the place where they had it. Sometimes it happened that you have this place and then suddenly some authority comes in and moves you away from it, throws you off because they don't like you. We have tried to put that into practice, but I think now is another time. I was going to say to Supriya there, I think now is another time where we've got to rack our brains and think of another system whereby we can live more simply, and the other point is that we have more time, because the system that we've been living in has been, it's been so non-stop that we haven't had time to think, to think profoundly. So we should try to work as much as we can, become purified, discuss with each other, and show a system whereby we can live more easily with the society in which we're in. Okay, was there another comment, Shani?
Yeah, Purnishri says, Kavashi Brata Ki Jai. I was also thinking of doing that. Now that you said it, I will make the commitment.
Jai.
108 rounds, was it?
Shani saying 108 rounds, Karneshri. Well, let's start with 64, and and see how we get on. Okay, yeah, Ekadashi is what is the time the Prabhupada as well set up that, okay, if you have your life, I mean, you're going to have to change your life quite dramatically to do it, or quite dramatically, shall we say. But Ekadashi was always set up for those things. So let's make Ekadashi great again. Make Ekadashi great again by trying to chant our 64 rounds. See if we can set up our lifestyle in that way. Yeah, great.
Madam Mohan says, devotees are asking, Prabhu, can you give class every week even after, bleep bleep is finished, please?
It's giving classes is it's. I remember Ravindra Swarup Prabhu made this point that that giving class is how he learned the philosophy. Now he's a PhD in philosophy himself, but giving class is so important. I think that all of us should practice it as much as possible, because it means that more of us there can be actually, speaking the philosophy to people in general, and we'll become more expert at doing it by the more that we do it. And also, when you're doing something, when you have to give a class, you have to study. You have to look in, because you don't want to be like, I'm cut out here. And that's a good element of the false ego. You actually will study because you want to actually give the right thing. That's the right motivation. because you want to give what Srila Prabhupada is giving, and your spiritual master is giving, because that's the only thing which will actually which will work and which will actually be of benefit to people in general, because that's our mission. I'm not saying that there isn't other missions there, but that's actually our mission, is to imbibe the philosophy, and then when the time comes to speak it for the benefit of people in general. Definitely give out all the books. These books are out there at the moment. Who knows what damage they're doing to the material society? But if we are there and practicing, then that will have that greater effect. Because people will actually come and they will see. I just using a phrase from Christ who said that people will know you by how you get on with each other. That they will know you are my disciples by how you deal with each other. And so our relations, how we live with each other, how we talk about each other, that's an important point. How do we talk about each other? Karma Prabhu was recently in Almixgard. He was doing some cooking for the BBT, and he noticed one of our leaders, Vaisheshika Prabhu, and he really noticed this point, how he was, anytime there was some gossip would come up or speaking about another person, he would just kind of divert it deliberately to some other type of conversation. And we all know, we've been through a lot together. There's some times when we have to confront issues straight up. The whole child protection issue very much has to be based on that, on those findings. But in our general conversations with the devotees, we will be very careful not to get involved in those things like Gramikata or speaking about some other devotee in a negative light, or because all it does is it harms ourselves, even if we're self-interest, but it harms our movement as well. And people notice this. They will notice devotees. They will notice who they are, how they live, what they say. People actually, they pick up on that, even if it's this whole thing by St. Francis of Assisi, which was said at one point, how we preach. Yeah, he said, I'm preaching all day long, and sometimes I also speak. So all of these things actually, they'll kick into how the effect of Lord Chaitanya's and the spreading of Lord Chaitanya's movement, because Lord Chaitanya is spreading it through the devotees. That's how he's spreading this movement. So if we're merciful, in that sense, we'll try to become merciful by following the acharyas, and then the whole parampara will actually start to work that way. And there's one other comment, sorry?
There's a couple more.
Yeah.
Pavani says, thank you for the lecture, Prabhu. I like the emphasis on being to reach people of all backgrounds, inclinations, to become a Krishna devotee. Narada Muni's story was a wonderful example. Hare Krishna.
Jai, yeah. I mean, that whole idea to reach as many people as we can, that's so good, because sometimes as we don't know how we're affecting people, and so it's a difficult. I was going to say, Pavani, Prabhu, that it's a difficult climate in which to bring our philosophy out. Not that we should ever be, fearful of it, but we almost have to create the circumstances whereby people will become open to what we have to say, and that's why I was saying about our lifestyle. I mean, even a simple thing. I've often noticed that when people come to the temple at our festivals, and we're all sitting around, and somebody's going around with the prasadam, people are absolutely amazed by that. They love it. They absolutely love it. And generally, we have some amazing servers going around. I mean, I don't know how they do it, but to give you an example, I was looking at Indradumna Maharaj's festival the other day, and they were going through different devotees who were saying things. Madhava was saying something, Dina Bandhu was saying some other people were saying things. And then they went to the kirtan line where somebody was serving the prasadam. Who was it? Bibi Govinda Maharaj. He was there in line with everybody else. He was handing out a pakora or something, you know. And what he said was that, he said, people have said to me about that sometimes they'd been known as to be a cook. I think he was explained to Prabhupada he was a great cook. But, and I'm sure he definitely was. He was a brilliant kirtaniya. But he was just in the line giving out the prasadam. He said, but this prasadam is amazing and it's having an effect on the people. So prasadam, cooking, kirtan, you know, we're busily trying to set up the circumstances. The festival program. I remember the festivals. Sometimes the festivals we did down in Limerick and Cork and Ananda Prabhu and yourself would drive down in the van and you know, in the middle of everything. Suddenly you would be there, you know, and we'd be setting up these festivals this was, you know, after Tribhuvannath, of course, and we were kind of a little bit more busy than at the time when Tribhuvannath was there. We'd drop everything, but we tried to drop everything and put on these festivals. You know, we're always kind of, it's always great to try to reach as many people as possible, and it seems to be, you know, not to be judgmental as such. That has a major effect on people because people become very put off in that climate if people feel as if they're being judged. And you know, we have quite a high standard that we're trying to focus, and we've a lifestyle in which we're trying to promote. But unless people can buy into our lifestyle, they'll never ever, you know, take to Krishna consciousness. And then if you go back and look at the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Prabhupada talks about the different types of people who actually surrender unto him, and Prabhupada is so liberal in that. He even says that some person who's not able to even help this movement or even be favourable to this movement, still if they do this and this, I think everybody knows the context I'm talking about. But to read that chapter and read Prabhupada's purports, it's not that we suddenly then we go for the lower standard. No. Prabhupada's saying that we actually go to the highest standard, and automatically all the other standards will be looked after. And in that section between verses 12 to 19, Krishna says, is dear to me, is dear to me, is dear to me. Every verse he says is dear to me. But then at the very end, he says, is very, very dear to me. So Prabhupada was very positive. He wanted us to practice in a very positive way. Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. You know, just be happy. Just chant Hare Krishna. Just feast and dance and chant. You know. Sorry, I'm going on.
There's a little more.
Pardon?
There's another question and a comment. Sorry.
Okay, I'll just take maybe the last one because I'm just conscious of looking at the time there. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Good question. Going back to the story where devotees offered non-veg to the deities. Says often when we're doing service, we're stuck in between whether try to say when we notice something or not say anything so as not to commit offence to the devotee or discourage them. But on the other hand, do we also not commit an offence if we see and not say anything? And before you answer, Sukha is just asking, can you give class next Tuesday?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I can give class next Tuesday. Thanks, Sukha. Sukha's great the way she's organising. Yeah, that's a very, very, very good question. You know, and it's the answer from my opinion, is that it's like everything else. When we go to chant, it's not that we can pay attention when we're chanting just when we go to chant. Everything that we do in our life up to the point when we take our beads and start to chant is going to dictate how we're going to concentrate our mind. So Prabhupada said chant 24 hours a day. But so also the decisions that we make in those circumstances will be dictated to how we're also practicing the process. Because we have to be sure that our false ego is not going to get involved. That's one of the major things. And that is something that we have to do by practice and almost by intuition, by experience. We have to judge the situation on its merits. We have to be sure at that point that we're going to make that right decision. Some people are karmically better at doing it than others, and generally then they can be put in a more of a position to make that situation. They're also spiritually better than others in the sense that they've made so many practices, so they can say the right thing. I'll show you my own impurities here by using a very mundane example. There's a famous football team, and they had a manager which was there for many years, a manager of the team, and they achieved huge success during that manager's reign. And then one of the major footballers at the time was trying to discern why that manager was so successful. And the example the reason that he gave, or the example that he gave, how he knew that he was so successful, was that during the halftime talk between the two halves, that those managers, there was two managers, they always said the right thing. It was uncanny. For the occasion, they always had the ability to say the right thing for the occasion. That was how he judged that manager, and that's how that manager was so successful. So all of us are in that situation as well. Every one of us. We all see those situations. So if we practice really thoroughly, very, very thoroughly, and we have the right motivation in saying the thing, then it will come across in the right way, and we'll say it in the right way. And in that way, our philosophy can be passed very nicely to many people, and it won't seem like it's a problem. Using the example of Jayadvaita Maharaj again, at one time he made a mistake and Prabhupada was calling him a fool directly to his face, and he felt more and more enlivened as Prabhupada was calling him that. Now Prabhupada, as we know, was the most expert in that. And if we look into different people who we've guided us through the years, I'll give another example for me was of Nagnajiti's spiritual master, Krishna, Smriti Krishna Maharaj. He had an amazing way of influencing me. But he never told me anything directly, but he would just make a couple of comments. And I actually immediately got what he was saying is, oh, I'm doing that wrong. I better correct myself. He had that ability to say that, you know. So that's just one way in which it can be done. Other people would have another way in which to do that, or would have different opinions on that. So I would be open to hear what other people have to say on it as well. But I often think that Ishtagosti assembly, the way in which we talk among ourselves, to talk, you know, to each other, you know, the more then we can actually become more expert at actually dealing with these situations, and the less likely we are to blow people out by being insensitive, by being totally in our own plane, not doing things because of the other person's welfare, but just because it doesn't fit our agenda, or, you know, horror of horrors, we think that we're the best, and we're trying to instruct everybody in how it should go on. So these are the different things. Okay, I'll stop there. Thank you, Prabhus, very much, and again offer my respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like the desire trees, who fulfill the desires of everyone. They're full of compassion for all the fallen conditioned souls, and any of my spiritual mentors, one and all. Hare Krishna. Jai.